on prospective sites for wildlife crossings in Wyoming. And a wildlife crossing just allows animals to cross human-made barriers safely. And here's some pictures of some. The one on the right would be, it's in just a grassy overpass that would be used for large game animals. And then the one on the left is just would be an underpass. And they also have other ones that are smaller that could be used by like reptiles and amphibians. And they're really just like ducts that go underneath. And so the benefits of the data would to be to display potential sites for wildlife crossings. It would, if the wildlife crossing was built, it would reduce the amount of wildlife vehicle collisions, which would save the lives of humans and animals. It would also alleviate the effects of habitat fragmentations for the species that are using the wildlife crossing, and this would be useful in the conservation field. And it would also show where many animals can be seen in one area, which would be useful for tourists or people who would just like to see a large variety of animals in one area. Okay, and then the industries that would find this data useful would be the conservation industry, the transportation industry, and the recreation industry. And I use vector data. And some attributes that were found in the layers that I had for the ranges. An attribute was a species, which just specified what species it was, and then a herd unit, which was used for identification purposes for the biologists who collected the data. And then under the Wyoming counties, it gave the county name, and for the major roads in Wyoming, it gave you the name of the road, the type of road it was, and the number of lanes that were on the road. And then to make these maps, I used the intersect tool, I used the clip tool, I used select by attribute, I used grouping, and I also used transparency. Okay, and this is my first map, and this just shows the ranges of large game animals in Wyoming, and I also have an inset map so you can see the location of Wyoming relative to the other states in the lower 48 states, because I couldn't get Alaska and Hawaii in there. But you can see I used the crucial mule deer range, the bighorn sheep range, the elk range, and also the moose range in Wyoming. And I made them 50% transparent so you can see where they're overlapped rather than one completely covering up the other. And so this shows where all of those ranges intersect. And there's not a whole lot of area on there where that does happen, but you can see the black areas is where all 4 of those animals would be found. So up in Park County, Fremont County, and then in the southern part of Teton County is where all 4 of those animals would be found. And then this is kind of my final map, which shows, again, all of the ranges of the animals, but the roads are also on there. And it also shows the one final spot that I found that would be the best place for a wildlife crossing. And I did that by using the layer that I created in the previous map where the intersection of all the ranges where all 4 of those animals would be found. I did a clip, and I used the major roads in Wyoming as the input layer, and then I clipped that with the intersection of all the ranges, and it came up with one final spot, and that was in Teton County, which is on the west side of Wyoming. It's highlighted, and I enlarged it on it right here, so you can see the spot is right there, and it's about a 5-mile stretch on Highway 191. So again, that's where all the ranges intersect, and where Highway 191 goes right through all of those ranges. And my data came from the University of Wyoming site. Has a geo-library, and it was really, really useful because it was organized and you could understand everything. Everything was categorized, and I got my ranges from there, and I got my counties from there. And then from a site called mapcruisin.com, I got my major roads. And then for my inset map, I used a shapefile that showed North America, and I narrowed that down to just the United States, and I got that from our files that we actually downloaded at the beginning of the class. So that was useful. Any questions?
Do we have any questions? I do.
Okay.
Go back 2 or 3 slides. Go back to the one where you showed your types of analysis. You introduce them right there. Is when I see a presentation like this, you basically said, I'm going to show you what these are and what they are as part of my maps I make for my project. But I always think that when you mention the term, to have the maps right side by side to say, okay, here's an example of an intersect right there. Here's what a clip is. I always think that that's just better when you introduce your technique, is to see a couple of the maps demonstrating that technique right there, so you could say, here's the term, this is how I used it on the map. But you kind of do that. It's just a couple of slides later.
Yeah.
And it's just, you kind of went over each one of those techniques and how you used them very well.
Yeah.
It's just that you had to kind of go back and reconnect, because I asked for you to demonstrate 4 to 6 geospatial analysis techniques, and you clearly did that.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit having the term and then having to go back and kind of connect the term that you talked about to your map. You certainly knew how to use them, and I think you used them correctly. And the reason why I think what's at the core of your study is you're trying to show how highways potentially fragment habitats, and how different populations of animals overlap and share space. And that's where you did an intersect tool.
Yeah, and by using not just one animal's range, you use 4, that makes it more